So we've discussed how you can add people manually by clicking right here. But what happens if you have a larger group of people you'd like to import? Maybe you have them in an Excel file, for example. So what I've done is I've created this little Excel file up here, just as an example, and I've saved it as a CSV. So one thing to remember is when you're actually putting together a Excel file to import a large list of people, and here we only have 3 people, but you could hypothetically have any number really. Okay, the important thing to remember is that there's only one field that's absolutely necessary. As you can see, I've put email address, last name, and first name. You don't actually have to have a last name or first name. The only thing that you absolutely need is the email address. For example, a lot of times, let's say you have a pop-up on your website, and that pop-up says, put your email address to get weekly updates or something like that. Now, the person is going to opt in easier if they only have to put their email versus asking for their full name and stuff. So a lot of times you'll be capturing only the email in certain circumstances. So in that instance, you would only have the email. Now, you obviously couldn't do it with first and last name or any other information if the email is not present, because that's what MailChimp is all about, is sending out the email. So here I have a list, and the one thing that you need to have in order for it to work is up here on the A column, you have to have in A1, you always have to have it spelled out exactly like this, email address. And if you change it to email or anything else, I found that it doesn't actually work. So make sure that it says email address just like this. That's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so I've saved this as a CSV file, and I'm just going to show you. Oops, don't save. We've already saved that. All right. So let's go to our MailChimp account here that we're using, and let's go to import. And then here you could see the different types of files you could do. Here's import context from CSV or TXT files, copy and paste from file, or integrated services, which allows you to import contracts from services like Google Contacts. And to see the different options, you could click and you'll be able to see all the integrations here. You can see it integrates with Salesforce, Eventbrite, etc. So if you're using any of these things, you could also utilize this. Okay, but right now we're just going to use a CSV file. Come down here to the bottom, click next, and then we'll browse for that file that we have right here. So sample list. Okay, and then go down to next, and then it's going to pull this up. So here it's going to show the different columns. So the first column is email address. That's correct. And they just want to make sure that everything is going to be specified correctly. Because let's go save. See, now it's on the second column. See, let's say that this is actually the first name and you meant to put the first name here. We actually, what we did was we had it at the top there, so it shows last name, first name. But here they just want to make sure that it is matching up. Okay, see that? So in case it's not matching up, for example, if you didn't have like email address, last name, and I believe you actually do need email address, but let's say that these were switched around. You'd be able to actually specify which column is which in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to next. And then you have the column name, also being first name. So we have their first name, last name, and email address. Now, you can use these arrows to move things around. Okay, so these are just the keyboard shortcuts. Actually, this is specifying. So for example, if you're using, and you can't see it, but it's showing you what you can actually type on your keyboard to move things, which I'm doing right now with the arrows. Or you can also click or go back like this. It's kind of not really that important because you realistically would just go like that, especially if you only have a few columns. Okay, so the next thing, we go down here to next. And then it says import method file, importing 3 of 3 columns. Okay, because you don't have to import all of the columns. So it shows email address, first name and last name. So it shows you how many you're importing. And then, but ideally when you have the data, you'd want to set it up in your Excel file in the way that you want to import it into MailChimp. That makes it just easier to import, makes a lot less steps once you actually get the information here to MailChimp. And then you want to categorize the imported contacts as subscribed, unsubscribed, or cleaned. Generally, you'd want to just have it unsubscribed, especially if you have permissions. So you want to make sure that you have that done. Now, addresses, what cleaned means is if you have addresses that have bounced too many times in the past, maybe on a different type of program that you're using or different email software, sending software, essentially you can add lists that are removed and then later on go in and say, okay, these are the ones that we do not want to email to. So let's say you had a huge list that you imported and then you want to unsubscribe certain people. You could then upload those people separately in here and stuff and then cancel them out from getting anything. But for now, let's just go to subscribed, okay? And then this allows you to auto update your existing list, which means if MailChimp finds a contact that's already on your list, it'll update the information. But because we're doing a fresh list, we don't need to worry about that. And the reason that option is there is a lot of times people will update their lists and maybe more people have joined the list or whatnot, and maybe things have changed. And if you're keeping track of that in another place, such as the Excel file, then you could definitely utilize this to update everything in MailChimp. So let's go ahead and click import. Okay, so remember we had added ABC123GHGH at Yahoo? That was Scott Paul that we had added manually. Now it's showing these three others that we've added, and they all are showing as subscribed status. So as you can see, this is how you add people in bulk. And to manage, go ahead, go to lists. You could take a look at all the lists that you'd have here. Here we only have one right now. You can actually click here and delete, and this would delete the entire list. Okay. Or what you could do is you could click here, right here, and you can actually manage the list where we were. And you could go in here and take a look at the different information of each person and manage that information. You can actually unsubscribe people. And this just allows you to, on a one-by-one basis, go ahead and manage different people. So that's how that works. And it's important to remember when you're importing these contacts that MailChimp charges by the number of people that you have in your list. So if you're dealing with very big lists, it's important to take a look at what the charges are going to be before you actually import it, just to make sure it's going to fit within your budget. Because if you have a $10 plan, or whatever it may be at the time, and you go to import thousands and thousands of people, you may end up getting a bill that's a little bit larger. And so it's important to know exactly what they're going to increase your cost or what ratio it's going to increase at before you do it. And maybe you would, maybe like to clean your list to the best contacts you have and not include some of the less important contacts or the contacts that don't seem to be as responsive.